Welcome back, and we're now on the third instalment of our day trip account. This week we're going to be introducing the Spotty Dotty, this beautiful bold target square. The colours and patterns of this motif were taken again from some of the work by Peter Blake. I love that bold target that's so iconic with that Beatles era. Our motifs again are worked in 2 different colourways, and this square introduces 5 different colours per square. We're starting off with this square. We're going to start with the royal, then work in the sunflower, the pistachio, Cupid, and then edging it all in our bright orange. For our second colourway, we're starting off with our sunflower, going in with our Cupid, working our royal, then our pink, and finishing off with our turquoise. Now I know some of you are working with your own Hayfield Bonus DK, and so I want to see what different colourways you also make with your designs. This week we're taking it up a notch and we're learning some more different stitches. We're using our treble stitch, but again we're working it in a different place, and that works our spot in the middle, and you can see how it looks really different even though we're working the same stitch. And then when we're learning to square off our circles, we're starting to introduce a double treble, which is a longer stitch, and also a half treble, which is a shorter stitch, in order to get our circle to turn into a square. So grab your hooks and your yarn and follow along with me to learn this next Spotty Dotty motif. Our Spotty Dotty square is worked in 2 main parts. First working the central circle, working in the round, making our central circle motif, and then coming out to the outer edge and squaring off. This square will introduce working some of our stitches in a different way. The middle is worked in trebles, but working into the top of the stitch, and then in the outer rounds to square off, we'll be introducing the double treble and half trebles. To start off, you want to take our first colour and place it onto our hook. We're going to be starting off with a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And making our central loop again. So we're going with a slip stitch into that first stitch, wrapping around and pulling through both of our stitches to join. And that's our central circle. We now need to get the height out from our middle. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And this acts as a fake treble when we're counting our total stitches at the end. We're going to want to work 12 trebles into the central circle. So we're going to wrap around through that middle donut, grab from the back, pull through to the front, so you've got 3 loops on your hook, wrap round, pull through 2, wrap round, pull through 2. And you want to repeat doing those trebles 13 times. Oops, not 13 times, 12 times. You want to repeat doing those trebles 12 times. When you're crocheting into your central loop, what I find helpful is to go over the tail. This means that you can use that as a bit of a drawstring to bring in that central loop. If you can't remember how many you've counted, you can count them as you go. So that's our first chain, so we don't count that. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 2 more trebles to do, 11, 12. And then I'm going to join my round in the 3rd stitch up. So we're going 1, 2, 3. We go into the stitch, into that stitch, grab from the back and join with a slip stitch. I can now pull that tail, and that brings in my central loop. Now when working in circles, keeping the amount of stitches we've got is really important, so I always recommend counting how many stitches you've got in your circle at the end of each round. We want 13 in total, so that's counting the first fake treble, 1, and then 12 real trebles round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I know I've got the right amount, so I can now fasten off. So I wrap around my hook, pull through, take my scissors, snip, pull through to fasten off. And that's our first round. We're now going to take our second colour, and we're going to join it onto our hook. And we're going to take our first piece, and we can join in anywhere in this first round. So we're going to join in with a slip stitch join. So we start with our loop on our hook, we come into the top of the stitch now. So we're working for this treble into the top of the stitch. So you can see the stitch at the top is our 2 loops. So you want to go under those 2, and there's 1 loop that runs underneath. So not in between the trebles, but in the top of the stitch. So we join in, grab our yarn from the back, pull through and pull through the loop on our hook to secure, pull that tight, and we're now ready to start our second round. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to work 1 treble down into the same stitch. To work this round, we're going to be increasing our stitches in every stitch. So this means we're going to be working 2 trebles into the top of each stitch of the whole round. So you're working 2 trebles into the top of each of the stitches. Into the join stitch. Don't worry if that feels a little bit tight, can still get in there. And what you can also do when you are going next to one of the ends of your previous round is you can hold the tail along the edge of your work, and this means that you can crochet over the top of it, helping weave in some of your ends as you go. We're doing 2 trebles in our final stitch, and we're going to join with a slip stitch join in the 3rd chain. So we're going to count up 1, 2, 3. I'm going to come in and join with a slip stitch. Now before you cut off and fasten off your yarn, you just want to double check again that you've got the right amount of stitches, and you should have 26 for this round. So you just want to count around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so make sure you've got the right amount of stitches, because we want our circle to be a certain number, because when we square off, all the maths needs to work out. So now I've got the right amount, we're going to do an extra chain, take our scissors, pull through to fasten off and pull tight. We're now going to introduce our 3rd colour into our 3rd round. So we're going to join in our 3rd colour for our 3rd round. And you can join in any stitch. I like to pick a stitch the opposite side to spread out my ends, so when we're sewing them in, they're not all in one clump. So we're going to join in again with a slip stitch, so we're going to go into the top of any stitch, take our yarn, pull it through, and pull it through the loop on our hook in one go. You want to pull that tight to secure. And now we're ready to start our third round. So I'm going to chain up 3, 1, 2, 3 for our height. And then working into the next stitch, I'm going to work 2 trebles. 1, 2. And then into the following stitch, I'm going to work 1 treble. For this round, we repeat that pattern of working 2 trebles into one stitch and then 1 treble into the next. This helps our circle increase and lay flat. So you're alternating between working 1 treble into the stitch and then working 2 trebles. You're working the pattern all the way around the round. Just keep an eye on your stitches to make sure that you keep alternating between 2 trebles into 1 and then 1 treble into 1. And when you reach your end, you can work the same working over the end, helping weave in one of your tails as you go. In your final hole, in the final top of your stitch, we're working 2 trebles and then completing the round by joining with a slip stitch join in the 3rd chain. So we're counting 1, 2, 3 into the 3rd chain, join with a slip stitch, and then just double check you've got the right amount of stitches in the final of your round before fastening off. At this point you should have 39. So we're going to do a stitch, take our scissors, snip our yarn, pull through to fasten off. We're now going on to our 4th and final round of our circle before starting the outer edge. So we're going to take our 4th colour to do our 4th round. So we're now joining in our 4th colour, starting with it on our hook, and joining in to any stitch of our round below. We're joining in again with a slip stitch, so we pick our stitch, come in, grab from the back, pull through, and pull through the loop on our hook. So we now want to get the height out, so we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, which works as our fake treble. And now the pattern for this round is we're going to treble 2 into the next stitch. And then for the following next 2 stitches, we're going to treble 1 into each stitch. 1 treble, 2 trebles. And then we're going to repeat trebling 2 into the next stitch. And then putting 1 treble into the next 2 stitches. The increase for each round changes, so it grows flat from the centre and it doesn't start ruching or becoming over full. So we're going to work 2 into 1 stitch and then 1 treble into the next 2 stitches. And you want to repeat that for the whole of the round. And just keep an eye that you're following your repeat, so we want to make sure that we add up to the right amount of stitches. We're going to do our final treble and join in with our slip stitch join. So we count 3 up, 1, 2, 3, into that 3rd stitch, join with our slip stitch, lay your piece out, give yourself a double check, counting your stitches. You want to have 52 at this point, and then we can do an extra stitch to fasten off. Pull through. And that completes our step 1 of our Spotty Dotty. We're now going to join in our next colour to square off from our circle. So we're bringing in our 5th colour to start the 5th round, starting with it on our hook. And we're going to join in any stitch, working into the top with a slip stitch, so pull 3, and pull 3. We're going to start off with a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And our starting chain is 6 because we're introducing a new longer stitch. We're introducing the double treble, which is like our treble stitch, but 1 step longer. And so this chain counts as our double treble, our first double treble, and 2 chains for the corner. So we're going to work a double treble in the next stitch along. So for our double treble, what we want to do is wrap around our hook twice to start. So we've got to start with 2 loops on our hook. We're going to work into the top of the next stitch, come 3, grab our yarn, pull through to the front. So now instead of having 3 loops like a treble, we have 4 loops on our hook. And we want to combine them in pairs. So we wrap around and pull through 2. So we've got 3, we wrap around, pull through 2. We've got final 2, which we wrap around again and pull through 2. Our double treble is 1 step longer than our treble, and we use these in the corner to help square off our circle. We're going to work 2 more of those into the same space. So we wrap around our hook twice again, 1, 2, into the same stitch, grab our yarn from the back, pull it through to the front. We've got 4 loops on our hook, we wrap around, pull through 2 of them, we're left with 3, wrap around, pull through 2 of them, left with 2, wrap around, pull through 2. And we've got 1 more of those in the same space, so wrap around your hook twice, into the same stitch, grab our yarn, pull it through, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2. We're now going to work 3 trebles into a stitch forming another cluster along, but we want to skip 2 stitches. So we're going to count 1, 2, and we're going to work into that 3rd stitch along. So we're just doing a treble now. So we're wrapping around once into that 3rd stitch, coming through, pulling through. We've got 3 on our hook, wrap, pull through 2, wrap, pull through 2. And we're working 2 more of those trebles into the same stitch to form a cluster. We're now also going to introduce the half treble, which is a smaller stitch than the treble stitch. This helps us straighten off from our circle. We're going to miss 2 stitches again, 1, 2, and working into the 3rd stitch, we're going to wrap around our hook, just like a treble, into the stitch, grab your yarn from the back, pull through to the front so you have 3 loops on your hook. But to make a half treble, we wrap around and we pull through all 3 at once to make a compacted stitch. We're going to do 2 more in the same space, so we wrap around into the top of that stitch, come through, pull through, so we've got 3 loops on our hook. We're going to wrap and pull through all 3 at once. And we're going to do 1 more of those, so wrap around into the same stitch, grab, pull through, wrap and pull through all 3. This makes a smaller, shorter half treble cluster. We're now going to skip 2 stitches and working into the 3rd, we're going to do another cluster of 3 trebles. So wrap, pull through, and pull through. We're now going to work on our next corner. So for our next corner, we're going to go back to the double trebles. So we're going to wrap around our hook twice. We're going to count 3 stitches along, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put 3 double trebles in the top of that stitch. We're now going to chain 2 for the corner, 1, 2, and then our second half of the corner is worked in the next stitch on. So we're going to do 3 double trebles into the next stitch on. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to work along our second side in the same pattern. So we're going to miss 2 and work 3 trebles into the 3rd stitch. Then we're going to miss 2 and work 3 half trebles into the 3rd stitch. So into the 3rd stitch we want 3 trebles in a cluster. We're going to miss 2 stitches and in the 3rd stitch we're going to work 3 half trebles. We're going to miss 2 stitches and in the 3rd stitch along work 3 trebles in a cluster again. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to work our next corner. So we're going to miss 2 stitches and in the 3rd stitch we're going to work 3 double trebles. So remember to wrap around twice for your double treble. 1, 2, 3. I always find it quite handy to pinch on the 3rd stitch so I know exactly where I'm coming in. And work your 3 double trebles. We're going to chain 2 for the corner, 1, 2, and then come back into the next stitch along with 3 double trebles. you can start to see your square forming, squaring off your circle, and by mixing those double trebles, trebles and half trebles, how we can get a straight edge from our circle. We're going to follow that pattern along your 2 remaining edges. So missing 2 stitches, working 3 trebles into the 3rd stitch, then missing 2 stitches, working 3 half trebles, and then missing 2 stitches and working 3 trebles before starting your next corner. And hopefully your maths has worked out. So when you get to the end, you should have 2 stitches left. And then we're going to do 2 double trebles into our first stitch where we joined to finish off the cluster of that first corner. So working 2 double trebles into that first stitch. And then we're going to complete the round by slip stitch joining, but this time we're slip stitch joining into the 4th chain because it's a longer stitch. So count 4 up, 1, 2, 3, 4, into the stitch and join the round with a slip stitch. You can now see that we've squared off our circle. We're going to take our colour and we're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to work the final round just in our granny square clusters. So we're going to work our corners the same as we did in week 1. So we're going to treble 3 into that first corner. We're going to work along the edge, working a cluster in between each cluster of trebles below. And on our final round, all our trebles are just normal trebles, the same height, working a cluster of 3 in between each gap. And in our corners, we're going to work 3 trebles, 2 chains, 3 trebles. You want to follow that pattern for the rest of the round, working 3 trebles as a cluster into each space, and in the corners working 3 trebles, 2 chains, 3 trebles. And as you approach that first corner where we started, we want to do 2 trebles into that first corner to finish off, and then join in to our 3rd stitch. So we count 1, 2, 3, with a slip stitch, and then we're going to do one extra chain, cut our tail, pull through to fasten off, and that completes our 6th round and finishes off our Spotty Dotty square. So I hope you've enjoyed following along and learning how to turn our circles into squares. Remember when you're making your circle just to keep counting those stitches at the end of every row to make sure that your maths add up for the end. That's my best top tip, because when you start putting this edge in and we haven't counted, that's sometimes when it can't add up. But don't worry, it's really easy to undo your rows and have another go to make sure that they work just perfectly. You're going to want to make 4 of each colourway, so you have 8 motifs in total to add to your blanket. You've got plenty of time to keep practicing, and remember to keep taking those photos and sharing your progress on our Facebook group and online. I hope you enjoy making your Spotty Dotty squares whilst listening to our summer playlist, and I'll see you next week where we'll be introducing the Flower Power Square. Enjoy your making, happy hooking!